Hello, everybody. Welcome to Snocast, Episode 3. You're here. My guest is here. I went to the side, but you're on the wrong side. My guest is over here on this side. Welcome to the second best thing to listen to, right behind the sound of basically taking the camera anywhere we want and trying to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. Welcome to Shesez. What's going on, my friend?
Hey, what's up? Oh no, my voice.
Just in time.
What's going on, people? How's it going?
Welcome. Yeah, we're super glad to have you here. We are talking about breaking games today, which sounds like a broad topic, and it kind of is, but the goal here was, I've been wanting to have Shesez on for a while. A good friend, I don't know, we met like a little while back, just, met's a relative term online, but fan of your work. Why don't you tell our audience and chat here just what the heck it is you do, in case anybody has no idea what in the world you do on YouTube and all that fun stuff.
Well, you already did my intro for me, so
I
guess I'll just break it down.
That's true.
Even more. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll manipulate the game's camera, usually in 3D games, to take it wherever. And a lot of games, most games, they have a restriction added to them in some way, so that they can hide certain things, whether it be environments that you're not supposed to see, or set pieces that are way far off in the back that are of low quality on purpose, so that it makes the game run better, smoother. So the idea is that I'll take the camera to find anything that you're not supposed to see, whether it be environments, developer techniques, or unused assets.
Yeah, which is super cool. I think what's really cool about Boundary Break. Whoa.
Sorry. You're running off the TV. There we go. Okay. Okay, I can hear you again.
Oh, okay, good. I was worried. What I love about Boundary Break, and I think the reason that you've become so successful over like the last year or whatever, is like no one else is really doing that. You're kind of a pioneer in that regard of just. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I got really lucky with that niche, and it's funny. Before I decided to make it into a show, I really wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping on anyone's toes, or at least just get an idea for what sort of competition I would have if I decided to go into that venture. And there was literally like nobody was doing it, which was insane to me. It's like, how is these tools available for so long, and yet, it's really surprising to me.
Ooh, I'm glitching out a little bit. Hopefully that's a passing venture. It should be okay.
Ooh, is it on my end?
No, it's my thing's like lagging, and then I don't know. We'll be all right. We're persevering. We're pushing through. It's better now, so I think we're okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because when I think of like breaking games, just like on a broader sense, I do think it's a little bit related to, like we were just talking about, like Aurum or like A+1 star or A+ star, and just that whole stuff in terms of they focus on like glitching or like hacking and mods and stuff. Oh. So it's like a similar aspect, but a little bit different too.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the best thing about what I'm doing, essentially, and that's why I've like started talking a lot more with Base 64 and A+ star, is that they're not like a direct competitor in any sort of way. They do things that are similar but different. Yeah. And so instead of competing with one another to get the same kind of content out, we can complement each other, which is, I'm so thankful that something that I do can have that, like colleagues almost, as opposed to people racing to get the same game done and do it better, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, you guys are very like supplementary content to each other, which is really good. And
we just did a panel at PAX. I don't know if you heard about it. But
yes, I think I did. How did that go?
I think it went really well. I was really nervous at the start, but like people were coming up to me telling me that it was good. A lot of people that had never heard of the show, which were the people I was worried about the most. Right. Because if you're a fan of Boundary Break, you're pretty much already in my corner, so I could mess up and I'm sure you'd forgive me. But if you had never heard of me before, those are the people that I was the most nervous about. But the people are coming up to me and saying, I didn't even know you guys existed, but I really enjoyed the panel. And,
yeah.
That was happening all day after we had that panel. So
I think it's really similar audiences for sure. And then there's probably something about just what you do that like everyone kind of has always thought of doing, like, or they've just always been curious, like, man, I always just wondered what's behind that wall or whatever, you know. And so there's probably just that like childhood curiosity in all of us that you kind of tap into, I think, anyway.
Oh, that's what drives me to this day.
Yeah,
You know, I have had those questions all my life.
Yep.
It's definitely started off early with Game Genie and like walk through walls codes and stuff like that. But now I've taken it to a whole nother level for sure. Even with Super Nintendo games, like those walk through wall codes help make the episode for sure. But you know, also messing with the layers and seeing what's hidden behind the layers is like another thing added to discovering things that you can't see in the game. So yeah, but big time influenced by just asking yourself the question, what is over there? Like the Paper Mario series in particular, it always had like those mysterious moments where like characters are hidden behind something and something's going on behind the scenes, and you just want to know what exactly is going on behind that, you know, curtain. Sometimes literally. So definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, Paper Mario, like, especially, I love Paper Mario. That's like one of my favorite games.
Oh, super good.
before we kind of dive in, because I have a list of questions here, but like we were just talking before this stream, you know, this will be kind of casual wherever we take the conversation. Before we dive super in, I do just want to say, chat, welcome. I'm glad you're here. For those, this is your first Snocast. If you've never been here before, part of what I like to do is we interact a little bit. So we'll do like a question segment at the end, sort of like a Q&A thing, where if you have any questions for Shesez or myself or about breaking games or anything like that, you can ask us that near the end. Also, just like above me and on the side, we have, you know, the bit boss and notifications. So that's like another fancy way you can sort of interact a little bit with the stream, and I'll go over any types of like bits or donations or follows or things at the end. But let's kind of dive in, because you already sort of answered this of just like how you got into boundary breaking, but I guess like what drove the start of the channel? Like you were saying, obviously, you know, it was this, you've always had this desire to do that, but what made you think like, okay, I'm actually going to dive in and do this as the channel?
So it started off with making a joint channel with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and we were doing like the normal stuff like top 10s and reviews and stuff like that. So I always had a passion for doing YouTube videos, but it never really worked out. And then it wasn't until I was trying to play Punch-Out on my computer, and I wanted to replace the IR pointer for the Wii remote with a mouse, and I was just fiddling with the controls. I didn't realize that Google was a thing that day for some reason, so I went through all the config, and I saw Free Look, which I thought maybe that could be what I'm looking for, and I select it, and all of a sudden I'm looking at Punch-Out Wii from a perspective I've never seen before, which was insane to me because the camera in that game is really limited.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool. Like I said, you know, I YouTubed to see if anyone has done this before, and when I hadn't seen that, I just upload a raw clip of fighting King Hippo from another angle on the channel. And because I had that pre-established audience of like 300 subscribers, I guess somebody must have shared it, passed it along somewhere, and it ended up on Nintendo's subreddit. No, vice versa. Reddit's Nintendo subreddit. And it did really well. At the time, though, I didn't have a concept of how useful of a social tool Reddit was. And so I didn't really think of the success of that at all. And it wasn't until the next day that I saw the video on GoNintendo.com, which was a website that I visit all the time, that I was like, oh, whoa, I think I got something here. And so already with that passion to produce content, I then decided to try to make a show based around that idea because of the response that raw clip got.
Yeah. Sometimes we get like these great ideas and we have no idea if anyone else will be interested in it at all, right? So then like seeing, oh, like people actually like this. This is really cool. That's sort of how I felt a little bit. First of all, Reddit, yes, is a big like underrated source of viewership. I have no idea. This is totally just a YouTube speculation on my part, but I think if a lot of people come from Reddit to your video, YouTube sees that as like a huge, just because it's from another site, so it almost like treats it as like if it was like a news article or something, right? Where it came from someone
Oh, it
totally.
absolutely. Yeah, that's not. I don't even think you have to speculate. I think that it's almost a proven fact at this
Sure.
point that if you get a lot of external linking to YouTube, YouTube sees that as a value and adds it to the algorithm, which then in turn throws you on the homepage a whole lot more. I mean, it certainly happened to me because up to that point, there was like nothing. It was flatline on my channel. But every time the channel would start to dip in popularity, at least according to YouTube's algorithm, all it took was another Kotaku article to all of a sudden just like reignite the flame in my channel, you know? So, I mean, I have a lot to thank as far as Game Informer and Kotaku goes, because every once in a while, those guys are just way too kind and right about the show, which in turn brings a lot of new faces to that channel.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me like a long time ago. I did a good game design on Shovel Knight, and somebody, I don't even know who it was, put it on R Games, which is like, you know, one of the biggest gaming subreddits.
Yeah.
And then it was like one of the top posts, like top 2 or 3. And that which, yeah, like, you know, same thing where it's kind of like, oh, I had no idea that other people like this stuff. But, you know, that was a lot. That was like my first huge jump. I think I was something like 500 subs, and then it jumped to 1,000 in like a day. And I remember just thinking that was just so mind-blowing that it's like 500 subs, like to us now, is like, that's a good, you know, day. But for me, like doubling the channel in like one video one day, it was like, this is nuts. So that kind of thing is pretty crazy.
It definitely, it's like, your perspective changes as you do YouTube a whole lot more, for sure. But that first day that you get like 500 or 1,000 subs, like in a day or 2 days, that's when you feel like it's like, whoa, what just happened? You know, 500 people just decided they wanted to keep watching my videos. That's insane.
Yeah, super crazy. I was we were talking a little bit about this before we started, but my aspect in terms of like breaking games is a little bit different, because obviously I've never done like any of the kind of stuff you do. But from my end, a lot of breaking games for me is related to speedrunning, which also is like sort of a little subset of my channel. Like I don't focus exclusively on that stuff, but every now and again I'll do videos on speedrunning, and then ironically some of my most popular stuff is speedrunning related. But like this month I just did Donkey Kong month, so we did like a video on speedrun guides of how to speedrun Donkey Kong 1 and 2. And the reason I love that stuff, more than just like I like speedrunning, it's fun, is the glitches and tricks and the stuff you can do to break these games. That stuff interests me the most, which is really funny because a lot of people think, some people, like a small subset, are like, oh, glitches in speedrunning should be banned, you know, speedrunning's only speedrunning if you're just doing it without glitches, going through as fast as you can. But I feel almost the opposite, that it's like, that's the best part of speedrunning to me, is like finding these ridiculous ways to break games, and people can beat them in like a couple minutes when they're hour-long games normally.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I like that they're separated into categories now. Like you can have a glitchless speed run, or you can have a glitch. So it's not mutually exclusive anymore, or is it the opposite? I don't care.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's funny though, isn't it? Like how so many very interesting things can come out of a speed run by necessity to get it done as fast as possible. Like the Metroid Prime speed runs are a great example of this, where the guy's like walking on the edge of the map, and you can see like the void on one side and the back-faced culling of the environment on the other, and all that stuff. And that's just part of the culture for them. That's just something that they have to do. There's not even like a sense of awe to that within that performance, I guess you could call it that. But like when you put it in the right format, when it's like you're showcasing all of those things as the feature, all of a sudden it seems a lot more interesting, which has always been kind of funny to me. So like in a way, boundary breaking has always existed because of glitches, especially speedrunners. But yeah, it's always been more about the speed. That's always been the focal point behind the speedrunning community. Whereas like boundary break is one of the things that for the first time is like just focusing on those things of taking the game apart and seeing what's underneath the hood.
I was gonna ask, because like from my perspective, the focus for you is a bit more like on the development side, right? Like trying to see what they were doing when they were making it, like you were saying, the hidden things behind or things to make it easier or things like that. Is that pretty accurate, you think?
Yeah, it's started going in that direction, which is originally I was trying to fight against that, honestly, because I'm not a game developer, and I try not to pretend to be. At least, especially in the old days, I definitely wasn't trying to come off as savvy on the subject. And the reason for that is because even though I can like look on Google and be like, oh, what could this be? Google, tell me. And Google will give me an answer. I could always broadcast misinformation, which is something I never wanted to do. But as I started doing the show more and more, all of my mulligans have become a learning experience. And so like every time I didn't know what something was, or I gave out a small amount of misinformation, game developers, people who hack games and all the people alike would come forward and say, hey, let me tell you how this works. Or, hey, you can use me as a resource anytime you want if there's something you don't understand. So with that, 2 years experience and all the contacts and everything, I've started now kind of making the show more about learning how games work because there's just more content there, and I've always had an idea of how to teach people things. I always felt like it doesn't have to be tired and boring. I think it can always be first and foremost fun, and then you get to take away a piece of knowledge with it,
Oh, totally.
And that way it's truly edutainment instead of just sitting there and trying to learn something.
Yeah, it's probably morphed a bit from like, oh, look, this is funny, there's like a thing hidden in the wall, there's like a character model, to more like, why is there a character model hidden in the wall, right?
Yeah.
Do you think you've like learned a lot about that, like the development culture and like the terms and stuff that you didn't know before because of all this?
Oh, big time. Yeah. Like I didn't even know what culling was when I first started the show.
I don't think I did until you had mentioned it or something too.
So. Yeah. So, no, I like knew practically nothing about game development, practically, and a lot of things that like I had seen that just like slaps you in the face, like level of detail and stuff like that. Those are things I never considered why that happens. I look at it and I think like, whoa, Marcus Phoenix started off with like a really blurry face and now all of a sudden he's hyper HD. Why is that?
Right.
It's like, that's a dumb design choice. But in truth, it's they loaded all the characters first and then the bump mapping and textures and everything else starts to load in after the fact for some reason with that game. So, but those are things I never even thought about. Now I'm at this point where I can look at something from behind the scenes and almost always be able to figure out what's going on. But the problem is, and a lot of people who end up critiquing the show afterwards, whether it be on Reddit or something else, one of the things that they fail to understand, and maybe it's because I don't convey it well enough, is that a lot of these things that you'll find behind the scenes are tailored to the developers who make them. So even if I have resources of people like, I was just about to name drop somebody, which I can't do, but very reputable sources who are working in that very specific field, who should be able to know the answer to those questions. If they look at something and say, maybe it's this, it's because game developers can make their own techniques and do their own things. Yeah. So when I say on the show these days, like, I honestly can't tell you why that would be there. It would be speculatory. A lot of people don't understand that it's like there isn't a unified general answer for a lot of these things.
Yeah. Fortunately. Have you ever like dabbled at all in game design or like making your own games or anything like that? Even like small projects?
No. Well, I've always wanted to. I have like an idea for a game and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I'm actually way happier doing what I do.
Yeah.
Because all I have to do is just pick apart what somebody else made.
Yeah.
And then get to do something creative with that. Whereas people in game design, it's like a multi-man team, and a lot of your vision gets robbed from you, whether from producers or other creators within your staff, and the hours are obnoxious. So
oh yeah,
nothing about game development sounds that great. Yeah.
Same. I only ask that because I get asked that a lot too. Same thing. Because if like I talk a lot about game design or like is this good design or not, and people ask me the same thing. Which I have similar things. Like I took like one game making class in college that was like super basic, developing in Game Maker and stuff like that. And so like my experience is very limited, but I feel exactly the same way that like I prefer kind of just like analyzing it or like talking about games that are already established because I don't know, it just interests me more. But everything you said too, where there's a lot of stress of like actually doing game development as a serious thing.
And for the most part, I'm a one-man show too.
Yeah.
Like I get help from people like Neckarun and stuff, so I don't want to rub those contributions away from other people for sure. Like really quick, Michael Chin, Neckarun, and Clay Burton, like are people who've routinely helped out the show. So thank you guys. But for the most part, I get to work by myself, which is great. Because like I said, if I have a vision for something, I'm in full control of making that a realization. Like there's no one telling me it's a bad idea. There's nobody that misinterprets what I say. It's all in my head, and I'm able to just kind of make it work. Again, with video games, you're not going to be able to have that.
Yeah.
You're going to have to make a lot of compromises. Same thing with movies too. It works a lot like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. That is really cool. I've seen, I don't remember where I saw it. I think maybe you did like an interview somewhere or something, but it seems like you work just unbelievably hard though and long, like throughout the week. And because you crank these things out every week, which is nuts to me because it's really hard for me to do one every other week. So I feel like you do even more work too, just in your videos. So it's kind of nuts to me. Walk me through that a little bit. Like your week, and is that nuts to you? Is it straining? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So thank you for recognizing the hard work, I suppose.
I mean, for real, like I admire that for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. So my work week is essentially like this. I wake up at 9 o'clock, get myself ready. Then I sit at the computer. We're starting at Monday, by the way. I'll work on the game for around 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock till like 8 o'clock at night. Wake up Tuesday, do the same thing. Wednesday, same thing. Then hopefully by then I've completed as much as I can for the game. And
when you say like work on, do you mean like gathering footage, or do you mean like trying to get it to work to where you can get footage?
Oh, no. Actually, at that point, I'll be working on the game, hopefully. So then, excuse me, I'm about to burp. And then Thursday, I just power through it. I like try to do all the editing, voice work, sound balancing, rendering, uploading, information, everything else, all on Thursday, which tends to be early in the day. Then I just power through until like midnight.
Dang.
Sometimes 1. Yeah. And then I'll have the video ready for Friday, because unfortunately when you do YouTube, there's too many things you can't account for, whether it be demonetization or copyright claims or anything else. So if that is to happen, you want to be ahead of the game, and you want to be able to correct that before it drops on the weekly basis. So then hopefully everything's ready and fine by Friday. I'll just put it out there. And I do think it's really important, both for a sense of satisfaction as well as learning from your audience, to just spend most of that day reading the comments, seeing where it's being shared and everything else, because it helps you grow as a creator. And I feel it's definitely helped me out. I don't know if you've ever seen episode 1 versus episode 80, but it's largely due to viewer feedback that it's kind of steered in that direction. And then Saturday is just like a Saturday for anyone else that works Monday through Friday. I just try to relax, just enjoy the Saturday. Sunday, I generally spend most of the day enjoying it, but I also take time at some point to look at a possible new camera. If it's like a camera that was made specifically for the show, chances are it's going to be wildly different from anything else I've done. So I take a little bit of Sunday to set up the camera, test the camera, see if it works, see if it does everything it needs to do in order for it to work as a Boundary Break episode. Sometimes that spills over into Monday, which is always a bad thing because you want to spend as much time as possible collecting footage, not setting up to get footage.
Right.
And the process just repeats itself over and over again. That's my work week.
Well, I was going to ask because that kind of leads into it. I'm curious how you pick the next game. Like, do you have like a mental calendar of like, oh, I did a Nintendo game this week, maybe I should do something else, or is it like, oh, this camera just became available, so I should hop on it? Like, what's your like mental process for that?
Yeah, primarily speaking, it's a mental schedule.
Right.
I try to balance Nintendo with non-Nintendo because I'm starting to get audiences on both sides, and I don't want to lose either one. And if you focus too much on Sony games, you lose the interest of the Nintendo gamers. And if you do 2 weeks in a row of Zelda or Mario, the other side gets annoyed that you're doing baby games.
Yeah, right. That's really funny.
Different strokes for different folks. I
yeah.
Know. But so that's basically in my head. I try to think ahead of time what games I want to cover and what games are viable. Sometimes, in some cases, a camera will just kind of be thrown on my lap for a game that a lot of people have been asking for, and I'll disrupt whatever schedule I have to do that game to make it as relevant as possible.
Yeah.
To get it while it's fresh. An example of that would be Sonic Mania. It was one where I got it done almost like a week after the game came out, which was pretty good. And it definitely paid off. There was a lot of people that tuned in for that episode.
Yeah, it's funny because I think for myself, I try to focus on new releases as much that I can, but it's probably really different for Boundary Breaking where it's like, well, is it viable? Like I hear that phrase a lot from you, like on Twitter of this just became viable, right? Like this just became something where we could actually do it.
Exciting moment.
Yeah. Because for me, it's like sometimes it's just play it quickly when it comes out and then like write thoughts on it. Like I have a little bit more control on how quickly I can get something out. I'm sure a lot of things for you are kind of like hand-tied of just limitations, right?
Yeah. Well, again, another thing is I love to have animators on board. Just to go a little bit off topic, but at the same time on topic. But one of the reasons why you don't see animators all the time is because they can oftentimes slow down the cycle. They'll be like, oh, I need an extra day or something like that. So you want to be like well ahead with everything before you bring on an animator. Otherwise, you lose control of your schedule. Bring me back around again. What was the question initially, or this?
I don't
topic?
Crap. No, we were talking about scheduling a little bit, but how you pick your game. We were saying if things are viable, right? So like if.
That was one thing I wanted to mention too. It's like, there can be several months where people are just suggesting this one game. Like for example, Kingdom Hearts 2 is one that is going to be coming out really soon.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
But since the beginning, people are like, you got to do Kingdom Hearts. And like, I've been looking into it, trying to figure out whether or not it's possible, viable. And it's been such a journey trying to get that game to work and trying to talk to the right people to make it work. And so when that day hits, it's like months and months of people begging for it, months and months of me looking into it and getting false leads, like, cold leads. When it finally happens, it's just such a momentous occasion that unfortunately never gets caught on camera. But like, that's why I immediately just go to Twitter and just be like, guys, Kingdom Hearts 2 is now officially viable because like, it's just like, oh my God, it's happening. Yeah. Unfortunately, not every game can be done, at least not at this very moment. So when it is possible, it's a big occasion.
What are like some of those limitations that make things unviable? I know that we talked a little bit about this before we started of there are probably some things that you want to share, some things you may not want to share, which I totally understand in terms of like what exactly you do to like do all this stuff. But like why was Kingdom Hearts 2, for example, like so hard to bring about for so long?
Yeah. So like you just said, there's certain things I can't get into only because I try to stay on the good side of developers. I've actually worked out relationships with a couple of developers, and a large part of that is that they trust me not to tell everyone exactly how to do everything because it would mess up game sales. Like it would promote piracy. But in the case of Kingdom Hearts 2, there's no you can play it on the computer, and usually tool makers are able to sorry. Tool makers are able to look at the data when you're able to run a game off a computer, and they can see the values of the cameras. They can find ways of figuring out what values are attached to the camera and what coordinate it's at. And so when they figure that out, they can then run a line of code that allows you to manipulate those values and tell the camera to go in whichever direction you want. Now, the problem is games like Nintendo games were very easy to do because there was a universal controller for that. I didn't need to have anybody come on board, figure all this out, and then send something my way. It was all just like a universal remote, essentially. Now, with PlayStation 2 games, it's possible. You can do it. But finding the values of those cameras can be different from game to game. And in the case of Kingdom Hearts, everything works on an orbit. So like the camera shifts like in a circular motion. It never goes like forward, backward, up, and down. And so if you can't find those values that go up, down, left, and right, it's incredibly difficult to write a line of code that tells it to do that, because you can't find the values that do it in the first place. So that's what was the biggest hurdle for the Kingdom Hearts series. And I can't really recall how Necron managed to pull it off. I hope he does a video explaining how he managed to find those values and eventually make the camera. But yeah, it just took a really, really long time for him to find those values and write a program that allowed me to manipulate the camera in that way. So that's what happens. That's what becomes a big hurdle for a lot of games. In some cases too, sometimes there's just no support. There's no fan base for certain games.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I can't cover it because it's not popular enough. It's rather no one's, like, for example, Xbox games cannot be run on a computer because no one cared to ever make an emulator for Xbox.
Right.
So you know, games like Stubbs, you know, the zombie, like, could never be done as a Boundary Break episode because there's no, like, as far as I know, there's no beta version of it that would have dev tools on it. And there's just no way to run it off of a computer. So there's no way to make a tool for it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, it's super interesting to me. How much of because I know, like, you're the compiler in a lot of ways, right? Like, how much of what you do is dependent on, like, the work of, you know, so many people that are, like, way smarter than me, right? That it's like, man, right. It's just like that's crazy to me that, like you said, it's people that are super passionate about this stuff and they want to do it. Like, I've seen so many people that are just like, they're chomping at the bit to, like, help you out, you know, that it's like, hey, I want you to cover this. That's so cool to me that, like, it's almost like you have a, like, fan base isn't the word, but you just have this community that, like, comes together for the show. Like, that seems really cool to me. That's really unique that, like, you know, other people helping the YouTube channel. Large part
of in the way that I've been able to build that community is by, you know, giving them a voice, or making sure that the audience doesn't just think that it's entirely a one-man show. You know, if you put the work out, if you do something to help me, I make sure that everyone sees that it was you that did what you did.
Yeah.
And I think the hacking or modding community oftentimes is stifled because so many YouTubers are willing to use those things that people have created, but never give credit. You don't know where it comes from, which I think has always been a bad, you know, work ethic, I guess you could put it. So I think a large part of what drives the passion of a lot of people that help me out is that they know that when they put the work in, that everyone's going to know who did it. You know, who's the one that made the car. I drive the car, but who made the car?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's what's helped build up the community. So many people know that the hard work pays off in a way. You know, um, I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool to me. Like, I think it's part of one, like, what you do is pretty unique already, but then, like, the way it all kind of comes together into these episodes is pretty unique. And it's probably unique, like, game to game, kind of like you were saying. Like, every game handles it totally differently. How the thing is built is totally different. That's just really interesting. Someone, so the Sweat brought something up earlier about 2D platformers versus, you know, like 3D. I was just curious about this. Like, what's like a better episode, or maybe like more fun for you to work on? Like, do you like the 2D stuff more or 3D stuff? Is there more stuff hidden in like 3D versus 2D, or is it totally random?
It's up to chance.
Yeah,
really.
right,
Like,
right.
Chrono Trigger was an episode that turned out phenomenally well, and you know, it left me the impression that like all Super Nintendo games are going to be as fruitful for an episode as like Earthbound or Chrono Trigger.
Right.
Then when I looked into other games that are also really popular, it comes up short. So I guess in a way, 2D games can be a lot harder to work with depending on which game it is. 3D games can be a lot of fun too, but really what it ends up being the most fun for me is if I have a storied history with the game, like Kingdom Hearts.
Sure,
So
totally.
like it's a total blast to go through a game that you admired growing up, and to go through it again and look, you know, find new content to share with people about it. That's when it becomes the most fun. Like I do try to make the show less about myself. I try to appeal to what the gaming community at large wants to see. So that's how we end up with episodes like BioShock and stuff like that. Games that I generally never played or had an interest for, but would do. And those ones are probably the most difficult to get through because you're not enjoying the experience necessarily. Sure. But it's still rewarding in the end. It's especially great to see like the fans of those games like lose their minds, you know, and be so thankful that you put in the work for it. So, you know, either way, I love to do it, but definitely when it's games that I've grown up with and really enjoyed.
I feel that a lot too, just with videos I do, where it's like, some people will ask, you know, oh, you should do a video on X, and it's like, I've never played that. So, I mean, like, you know, it'd be fine, like, at least from on my side of like game design of like, I'll analyze why this game is great or not great, but yeah, like, without the connect, like, the best videos or the ones that I enjoy the most are the ones that I've had that long relationship with, just like you're saying. That's why part of why I do like Donkey Kong Month. It's like my favorite series. I love doing. I could pick apart anything on Donkey Kong. I could talk about the top 10, you know, ground textures.
I saw your video on Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah.
Why it's bad game design.
That actually, so that's probably, like, of all videos I've ever done, that may be the one I'm most proud of. And I think it's exactly because of what you said, that I grew up with that game. I loved that game, but then to play it again now later, I have a different mindset going in. I have a different view of like what makes a game enjoyable or not, or good or bad, and like that totally, like that. I was gonna say the video.
I think with even the developers came forward and said that they weren't really proud of it. And they seem to also share some stock in the idea that game killed the 3D platformers for a while.
Right.
Which, if they're saying it themselves, I can't argue that anymore. But
right.
But I was gonna say, I feel like they were trying to go for like a very intentional design, like a way for you to play it to enjoy it. But at the same time, they have that level of freedom, which if you decide to go off in a direction that the developers did not intend, it just makes it a huge slog.
Yeah.
Which we're way off topic, but that's how I always felt about Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah.
It's like if I tried to do things out of order, it takes a lot longer than if I just like kind of followed the trail of bananas and swapped out the characters when it clearly showed like, oh, now it's a blue trail, switch out to Lanky.
Yes.
You know?
Yep. Yeah, that was like my least favorite part of the game, but you're exactly right. It's how they bringing it back to like breaking games, but still related to Donkey Kong 64. Because I was curious about this. You've sometimes found like never before seen discoveries in games, right? And there were things Donkey Kong 64, like recently, there was the banana coin thing, right? The rainbow banana coin that was discovered like 20 years later. One, is it like super crazy when you find something in an episode and it's like groundbreaking? And two, like, are you mad when like other people find things that it's like, oh, that could have been my discovery or something like that?
Oh no, I appreciate anybody coming out with a new discovery, finding something new. My gripe is like, that banana coin in particular. It's like it's just a coin, right? It's just one coin, and that blew up. That has multi-million views.
Yes.
For that one thing. Whereas I'm running a weekly show, finding stuff like this.
Yeah.
Sometimes that are way more outrageous than a coin.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating to me, to see the coin get like 2 million views, whereas finding Sailor Moon manga in Punch Out for Wii, nothing. Nobody's talking about it.
Right.
That's the rough part. But as far as people finding it, power to them.
Yeah.
I'm happy for them. I think the only time it becomes a frustration would be when I have a very intended decision to go and do a game, and it's undermined by someone that like decided, oh, I'm going to do that too. Oh, Shesez is doing this game. Let me look into it. And then they just kind of parade around the first two things that they find. And now that those discoveries have no impact when watching on the show. But unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Like, that's the Wild West of entertainment. Yeah. I wouldn't change it for the world, but personally, I of course don't like that.
Yeah.
But as far as people just finding something for a game that has nothing to do with what I'm working towards, like, that's great. Power to you, man. Good job on that find, for sure.
I wanted to talk about Sequence Break, because you did that a little bit there. So Sequence Break, like almost like a spin-off show of sorts, of related to it, but totally different at the same time. How did that come about? Well, we'll start there.
Oh, let me think. I think, Sequence Break was just first of all, there was a need for new content on the channel.
Sure.
So many people are saying, like, oh, can you do something other than Boundary Break every week? Like, can you do a game review and stuff like that? And I was looking into my options, and I'm like, game reviews don't really match up with the style of content that I provide. Right. It doesn't really. Unfortunately, there's some people that are going to be totally into it, whereas there's going to be a much larger group of people that see that and turn away or even unsubscribe, and it's just going to send bad signals to the YouTube algorithm. So there was a need for a new show to spice up the channel a little bit. And I kind of already had an idea of, like, there was like some things, there's some situations where it was like, oh, this is really cool and interesting, but it's not very boundary breaky, so I'm going to leave it out of the episode. And after a while, after enough times that had happened, I thought to myself, well, is anyone doing a show on this? So then I look it up and see if anyone's doing that. And at best, there was like, again, speedrunning community, like, oh, this is what sequence breaking does in speedruns, and like top 10 sequence breaking in speedrun marathons and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, so again, there's just an empty space that I could fill with new content, and it's very similar to Boundary Break, so let's do it. And I decided to challenge myself with a game that I knew people like, which was Breath of the Wild at the time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that might be a tough one because it's so open and free and there's not a lot of cutscenes. But there were enough, and that ended up being the premiere episode, which ended up doing very, very well, which is a good start to a new series. It helps aid it to the next one, because then, people are getting introduced to Sequence Break instead of fans giving Sequence Break a chance. Right. And so then I can move on to a lesser popular game, and maybe that'll find its audience as well. And so mainly, Sequence Break is now an accompany piece to games that have already been vetted on the channel as successful. So it's like right now I've done Breath of the Wild, Resident Evil 4, and Ocarina of Time. Yeah. And yeah, they just pull in an audience, and I'm able to do 2 videos on one game that makes fans of all kinds pretty happy, I think.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's how
really
that came to be.
smart. I was thinking about sequence breaking because you're right. Like with speedrunning, what's so funny about like there will be new discoveries, just like boundary breaking. There's new discoveries for speedrunning like 20 years after games too. Like Super Metroid, there was some recent glitch that made it like infinitely shorter than it originally was. And so they like make new categories that it's like, oh well, no major glitches category, because like this run will still have glitches, but now there's this new glitch that makes it like 5 minutes long. So okay, we'll just ignore that glitch. But it's funny because I feel like sequence breaking is something where there's always still new discoveries as well in games all the time. Things that come up that people had no idea about, and then they come up again. It's just interesting to me.
Yeah, well, it's a great. I love Sequence Break because it's a great what if series.
Yeah.
You know, like there's many instances where a game requires you to have like a companion character to trigger a cutscene that ends up allowing you to get past a certain area where now you have to use that character in conjunction with everything that you interact with. It's like, what if you didn't have that character with you? You know, and
Right.
that's definitely how. Like I was like, okay, so what would the concept of Sequence Break be? And that's immediately like what came to mind. It's just like you take one element away that's necessary to get to a certain point of the game, and what is it like when you don't have that element? Like if you were able to get past those boundaries, and I can't escape that word for some reason, I guess. But
Right.
it's what would happen then? So
Do you have
yeah,
other ideas for like other spin-off things? I know you did like the animation one recently, so Harry Partridge
yeah,
animation breaking. Do you have like ideas like that all the time, just floating around?
not a ton. Again, my biggest advice to everyone out there that wants to do a YouTube channel, just gotta keep touching this mouse so that I don't lose feed to you. Um, my biggest advice to anybody is to have an idea that everyone wants to see but has never seen before.
Hmm.
That's definitely the fastest way to grow on YouTube, I think. And then the other one would be to have a very stellar personality, and
Right,
just
right.
make existing content work with your personality, your style, your way of going about it. So, but the hardest part is coming up with that idea, right?
Right.
So, Boundary Break, again, I'm incredibly fortunate to pioneer that idea. Um, but it could have just as easily been someone else that did it first.
Hmm.
And Sequence Break, I think I just got lucky into that because, it was like, it was an easy branch to kind of swing to. I already had a pre-established audience to vet it and send it out to people and share it with others. So like that helped. And then Animation Break, that was easily the biggest gamble. I think like
Yeah.
the idea was that it's still boundary breaking in a sense. It's much like the 2D episodes of Boundary Break, but unfortunately, the biggest hurdle to get over is the idea that you're now looking at animators' work instead of a video game, which is like an entirely different genre on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I didn't
Yeah.
know if that was going to work, but it's actually now, if you look at the video views on that first Animation Break, it's doing really well. Like it's actually got a good shelf life to it.
Hmm.
Still gets like over 150 views per hour. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That that's the YouTube algorithm in a nutshell, isn't it? Where it's like, oh, maybe it didn't do super well at the beginning, or maybe it did, and then it like dips. It changes all the time. One day it'll randomly become really popular, and who knows. So we'll close out with some questions from chat. I'll open it up to anybody that has a question. We already have one from somebody, but I want to start because I'll start with a question, and this will give time for people to put in their questions for you. But my question is, do you have a white whale? Do you have like your Moby Dick that's like, what's that one game that I haven't been able to cover yet, but one day I hope and pray that it'll be possible? I assume Kingdom Hearts 2 might have been something similar to that, but do you still have that like white whale that you haven't been able to do?
yeah, Kingdom Hearts 2 was definitely that white whale for a long time, and we're finally bagging it and putting it on them. Mario Odyssey is another one
Mm,
where it's such a it seems like such a distant dream right now, but to be able to cover it within a time period that people still care about Mario Odyssey, which is indefinitely, but of course more than ever, it's going to be when it's still relatively fresh and new. I'd love to cover it then. So as far as anything else, no. I mean, like, we're finally getting to that point now where I can almost cover everything that I want. I think, like, Gears of War is another one where it's like that one's going to be really tough.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, you know what is my white whale? I actually do have an answer for this. I have a very good answer for this. My white whale is Pixar movies.
Ooh, okay, wow.
Yeah, I want to be able to cover Pixar movies, and it's possible. It's just incredibly unlikely that I'll ever get the opportunity to do it.
Wow.
But like, you never want to give up on the idea on just the basis that it's unlikely. You always want to try to aim high and see what happens. Like, you know, I managed to get David Hayter to do the voice of Solid Snake for the Metal Gear Solid. A lot of people would say that that's impossible. Like, you shouldn't be able to make that happen. But I tried.
Right.
I tried and it did.
You know how you'll definitely not do it is if you don't try. So
right, exactly, yeah. So Pixar movies is something that like I'm working towards. I'm actually going to mention trying to get Disney's attention on Twitter after the Kingdom Hearts episode for that.
Wow, yeah.
But I mean, I'm going to approach it in a very practical way. I'm going to be like, guys, you know, it's not likely that's going to happen, but
right.
You know, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen because so many people are asking for it, and that's how we get Disney's attention and make it happen.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's something that I would never have even thought of. But you're right. Like, that's genius. That would be so cool to see that. I'd be super interested in that.
Particularly, like, I want to see with Bug's Life, the tree that all the ants have their little environment with. You know how they do that zoom out at the end of the movie and you see like a little brook and the tree and everything? I want to take it even further and just see just how much they rendered modeled. Like, I'm so curious.
That's really crazy. Like, I'm just thinking of all the possibilities with that. Because you're right. Like, the theme I'm seeing with all this, and it's with Boundary Break, it's with movies, animation, everything, is it's all going to be different based on the developer, right? So whoever did it, they're going to have different techniques for what they did. They're going to have different reasons for the things they left out. Like, I just saw you tweet the other day with Kingdom Hearts 2, the stars in a sky were like holes in that blows my mind. So they made like a star sheet or a sky, a night sky, but then they poked holes in it with a yellow above it for the stars to shine through. And that's so funny to me.
I think they were trying to experiment with something there, like whether it be like change the color of the sky or have like different like holes in the sky or something and have it rotate, something to that effect, so that the stars in the actual skybox would change color or dim or something. But whatever the case may be, they certainly didn't go with that, and instead now we just have a skybox that has stars, but those stars are just holes in the sky with a yellow sheet of paper behind it.
That's so funny.
So funny. The rest of the game is not like that. It's just that one area. So
we have a question from Eric Boingo that says, how about Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze Boundary Break episode? I was related to this. I was going to ask like Switch versus like older consoles or things like that. Is it harder for newer console games versus older? It's
way harder for newer consoles because it runs off the hardware itself, and when you're manipulating the camera of the game, it's incredibly likely that you'll crash it.
Right.
So there's like a process too that goes into booting the hardware to use the camera in the first place. It takes about 8 minutes to boot it up. So every time the game crashes, you have to turn off the system, turn it back on, boot it up for 8 minutes, and try again.
Dang.
That's happened, with every Wii U game that I've done so far. That's always been the case. Splatoon, Breath of the Wild, and Mario Kart 8, all of them had that problem.
Dang.
So it's definitely the most difficult. Tropical Freeze is viable. I know for a fact it's viable, so I can definitely do that at some point.
Do it in honor of Donkey Kong Month, my friend.
Donkey Kong Month.
Hey, it's coming to Switch soon. Like, I'm sure, like, is Switch...
Yeah, is it? It's not out yet, right?
No, I think it comes May 6th or something like that. It's coming out really soon.
Okay.
We need funky mode Boundary Break. So funky just flying out in the background somewhere.
Yeah, that's the one thing is I won't be able to do funky mode, but I can do Tropical Freeze.
Right. That would be
awesome,
good.
by the way. That funky is.
Yeah. Oh man, it's That's a great game. I'll just plug that. If anyone's never played Tropical Freeze, phenomenal game. Chris the Fields asked, what about Star Tropics? Star Tropics Boundary Break. Make it right.
So Star Tropics, I have big plans for that. You know, I already have the idea for the intro planned out in my head. I already have the idea for the guests that will come on and help me with the episode. But the thing that's holding it back the most is it's wildly unpopular. It's like nobody talks about it. It deserves to be talked about. I love Star Tropics. That's why Mikey Jones is my avatar with sunglasses and a purple T-shirt. It's because I love the game so much. But there needs to be an audience for it. And the longer I wait to put it out, the more people that are just like, I like Boundary Break, so I'll watch anything. Will watch, you know.
Right.
And I think that's the prime moment. That's the best time to plug your favorite game of all time that nobody plays is when you're so big that everyone's watching your show anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Isn't that the dream? I mean, again, this is a little off topic, but the dream for YouTubers, right, is it's like get to a point where people watch you for you, just the personality, so you can do whatever the heck you want. And
which I'm sure that'll never happen for me. I think, you know, I think people are giving me a little bit of a, you know, they're giving me a bit of slack. Like they're watching a lot of my content, but it's never going to be about me. I always know the star of the show is really the stuff that I'm showing off.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
well, that makes sense. That's true. Yeah. You hit it earlier of edutainment. Like, you know, your show's a little bit more on the edutainment side. So, like you said, it's always going to be more about the content than necessarily the dude doing voiceover.
Yeah.
But I feel you on that.
I knew that was going to happen too. Like, when I first started doing the series, you know, I looked at my, not competition, but people of the same genre. Mm-hmm. And I looked and studied, and I thought to myself, the thing that I don't like about these guys the most is that they're just a vessel for all this information. Sorry. They're just a vessel for all this information, and you don't get to know them at all. You don't even usually get to see their face. Right. And so that's how I made the decision to put myself on camera in the outros and originally in the intros, but that was too much. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's why you end up seeing me in the outros usually, so that you can associate a face with the people that make that content for you. It's actually influenced a couple of other people that do the same kind of stuff that I do. Like Beta64 has now started getting on camera more and stuff like that.
I think it's really important. Cool. You build kind of a rapport with that person. That was advice I got at PRGE from somebody 2 years ago as well. And then I started doing the same thing, try to put myself in the videos. Off topic, but I agree completely.
Cool.
Ethendor says, games with huge worlds like Skyrim, Wind Waker, Xenoblade, does it load the entire world or do they load it in chunks when you get close? I assume they're talking like the larger, like big out map kind of thing, like the world map.
So with big games like those, and actually I have episodes for almost all the games you mentioned. So if you ever want to check it out, you know, just visit my channel. It's youtube.com. You just type in Boundary Break, and then you can type in the game that you want, like for example Skyrim there. Yeah. And you can see for yourself that it doesn't really load in chunks. It loads almost everything all at once, but it's the level of detail that gets decided depending on your position. Mm-hmm. So lots of detail will be fleshed out in your immediate vicinity, and then a lot of the environment that you visited way far back or are about to visit way far ahead is still there. It's just really, really, really like low quality. It's like the textures are incredibly blurry, blotchy, and the amount of polygons that make up the objects is significantly reduced to the point where it's like just 4 sides to make a cube for a building instead of like, you know, a highly detailed building that has like ridges and windowsills and all that stuff. So that's how they managed to pull that off. And I think in the case of all the questions you just asked, in Skyrim, that's definitely the case. In Wind Waker, it's mostly just a giant ocean to begin with.
Right.
And then level of detail works the same way. It's like if you see an island way off in the distance, it becomes a 2D texture, like a shadowy 2D texture. And the islands that you approach become more elaborate as you get closer and closer.
Some games you can even see it happen, right? Where like if the draw distance is super far, but you're walking and you see things in the distance, sometimes they'll pop in as like more detailed as you get closer. Sometimes you just even see that happening as you're playing the game, which is interesting.
Yeah. for sure.
Well, this will probably be our last one, then we can wrap up.
Okay.
Villy111. What sort of game is ideal for boundary breaking? Like, what's your ideal episode? I mean, I know we talked about the ones that you like enjoy, the ones you've had a connection with, but what are like the ones that make like the best episodes, or the ones that you're most proud of, or things like that?
So the recipe for the best boundary break episode is one, super popular. So like Grand Theft Auto 5 levels of popular would be fantastic if possible, but in most cases it's not. But then the other is the limitations that the game provides. Like if it's more limited, like Punch Out, then all I have to do is nudge the camera to the left or right to show you a whole world that you've never seen before.
Right.
You know, it's games where the camera is so limited that you know, your experience is decided for you almost by the developers, or you know, if there's a lot of cases of the game deliberately teasing you with something that's behind the scenes that you never get a chance to see. Those games make a great boundary break episode because I'll be able to show that for you. But at the end of the day, any episode can be fine class meat if it just has like a new discovery out of bounds that someone has never seen before. So like Uncharted, for example, had a beta version of a skeleton that you never get to see because the camera doesn't allow itself to angle towards the beta skeleton. But it's officially beta because you can see footage of that skeleton in like behind the scenes making of footage of Uncharted. So very cool stuff.
No, that is cool. That's awesome. I love the work you do. It's you're doing God's work, as a lot of people would say. We'll roll out the, oh man, I almost totally just stole a phrase from Hot Ones. I'll roll out the red carpet for you, my friend. Tell us anything you'd like to plug, anything you'd want to the people to check out, anything like that.
This camera.
Yeah.
Tell the world what you got going on.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, right now I'm doing the Kingdom Hearts 2 episode. I'm putting the most work I've ever put into a boundary break episode for this one. So it's late. And if anyone watching this has never seen the show, always check me out. See if you enjoy the content to begin with. And if you're a fan watching this show right now, make sure you share the crap out of the Kingdom Hearts video, because I guarantee the YouTube algorithm is not going to like the fact that I'm like 4 days late on my weekly upload schedule. So
you're like, come on, you know, clock's ticking.
Yeah, exactly. YouTube waits for no one. But yeah, that's all I got. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's probably going to come out Monday or Tuesday.
I was going to ask this just about Kingdom Hearts. It's totally we're wrapping up, but about Kingdom Hearts, do you have to like play through the game to like get to the certain areas? Like, do you basically play the game and then stop to like capture stuff, and then you'll play more of the game, and like, or is there like a code where it's like go straight to Lion King level? Or
yeah. So like, I'll answer this question at length if you don't mind. That doesn't spill too much, but
no, totally.
So yeah, like with situations like that, I get really lucky. A lot of times people have already provided saved files for games that I can then use and like kind of jump ahead to certain areas of the game, and it's totally fine. I'm not missing anything because it's usually just like a huge chunk of gameplay, and then you get to the next key scene and next key area, and then I can explore that key area, key scene, and then I can jump to the next save file and do that. But in the case of Kingdom Hearts 2, the reason why it took 6 days to accumulate footage as opposed to just a normal work week where I get it done in 3 days, is because there's cutscenes in every segment of the game. So even if I did like a complete save file, there's like 13 hours of cutscenes that I'm just skipping by doing that. And even if I was to jump from scene to scene, it doesn't really help because the gameplay is actually kind of sparse in comparison to how lengthy the cutscenes are. And so I'm playing through the entire game. I just finished it, but I had to play through the entire game and go through just about every cutscene and watch it 4 times. One time to see if there's anything worth checking out, another time to then record what I found, then a third time to record the vanilla version of the cutscene so that people who've never played Kingdom Hearts can, you know, enjoy it, see the cutscene for the first time, and then the fourth time so I can get through the game.
Wow, yeah, that's fascinating. The only reason I asked that is because I actually just played through Kingdom Hearts 2 myself. I played through 1 and 2 and like a few others just because I'm trying to brush up before 3, and I might do a video on it. But
Such a good game.
it's amazing. I grew up with them as well, like same thing. Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 are some of my favorite on the PS2. But I only asked that because I just played it, so I know it's a long game. Like to go all the way through that's a long game. It's like 25 hours at least.
Oh yeah, and I still did everything I could to make it as quick as possible. Of course, I can speed up the game about 4 times its original speed. So a lot of times I'm not even enjoying the game. I'm just like speeding through it. Right. I didn't use it until much later in the game because it wasn't a problem until much later in the game. But I also had to use a quick experience boost code, get myself to level 99 so I wasn't struggling with enemies anymore.
Wow.
So basically anything I could do to cut through the enemies like butter and just fly for the game as fast as possible.
Man, that's so funny, yeah. That's awesome, though. That kind of stuff totally fascinates me. I love it. Total side tangent, but anyway, thank you for being on and being a guest. It was a pleasure to talk to you, yeah. Wonderful topic. Thank you, chat, for being here. We had some new follows today. Athendor, Haltine, Tecmo80, Lord Critical Mass, not Loud Critical Mass. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your questions. Thanks for welcoming our guest, Shesez, and I appreciate it. Any like final words before we get out of here?
No, I think I pretty much said everything I need to say. Thank you, chat. Thank you so much for watching.
You've heard it here first, folks. I've said everything I need to say. The best closing remarks ever. We'll see you guys next time, and we're out of here. Bye-bye. See ya.
Later.